For my project, I decided to compare the two poems Nightclub by Billy Collins and Nostalgia by Billy Collins. I analyzed theme, symbolism, tone and mood, diction and imagery, and connotation and denotation in both of these poems. The theme of Nightclub is that beauty causes foolishness. The first stanza reads as follows. You are so beautiful and I am a fool to be in love with you is a theme that keeps coming up in songs and poems. There seems to be no room for variation. I have never heard anyone sing, I am so beautiful, and you are a fool to be in love with me, even though this notion has surely crossed the minds of women and men alike. You are so beautiful, too bad you are a fool, is another one you don't hear. Or, you are a fool to consider me beautiful, that one you will never hear guaranteed. In the first 4 lines, Collins nearly self-references his own poem, discussing how the same theme is common in the media. In lines 5 and 6, he discusses a possible saying people could communicate but never do. He does this again in the second half of the stanza. In each case, only the first shows a giving up of oneself for another's beauty, thereby making oneself a fool. This is surprising because on lines 6 through 10, it is shown that selfish thoughts do cross people's minds. This shows that beauty in one person can cause foolishness in another. For no particular reason this afternoon, I am listening to Johnny Hartman, whose dark voice can curl around the concepts on love, beauty, and foolishness like no one else's can. It feels like smoke curling up from a cigarette someone left burning on a baby grand piano around 3 o'clock in the morning. Smoke that billows up into the bright lights, while out there in the darkness, some of the beautiful fools have gathered around little tables to listen, some with their eyes closed, others leaning forward into the music as if it were holding them up, or twirling the loose ice in a glass, slipping by degrees into a rhythmic dream. The second stanza is highly occupied with imagery of the musician and his voice the author hears during his stay at the nightclub, especially when talking about the musician's voice, comparing it to dark smoke. This smoke is that which comes from a burning cigarette sitting on top of a baby grand piano at 3 in the morning. This is a very good example of both imagery and symbolism. The image given when Collins describes the voice is incredibly detailed, giving even a time frame for which the image is to occur. The cigarette is also a symbol for the music and voice of the singer at the nightclub. This is also a good example of good connotation towards usually negative viewed things like smoke and cigarettes. The musician is bringing peace and enlightenment to the audience that hears him and is bringing it forth by way of smoke, which is usually seen in a bad way. The music also has good connotation in that it entrances the listeners and makes them feel peaceful. Yes, there is all this foolish beauty, born beyond midnight, that has no desire to go home, especially now when everyone in the room is watching the large man with the tenor sax that hangs from his neck like a golden fish. He moves forward to the edge of the stage and hands the instrument down to me and nods that I should play. So I put the mouthpiece to my lips and blow into it with all my living breath. We are so foolish, my long bebop solo begins by saying, so damn foolish, we have become beautiful without even knowing it. In the beginning of this stanza, it is clear that Collins is back to addressing the theme that beauty causes foolishness. When discussing the foolish beauty born beyond midnight, he tells that the beauty has no desire to go home, and instead wants to stay where it currently is, causing foolishness. He also addresses the late night time frame again, as it shows the time of day when the beauty of the world impacts people and starts to cause them to act foolishly. When discussing the tenor sax, saying it is like a golden fish is very good imagery, and when a great example of a simile. This really shows the reader the image Collins is trying to convey when talking about the instrument. When the author receives the instrument from the musician, It is as if the musician is saying, "Go forth, blow your foolish horn, making beautiful music." This again relates back to the theme of this poem, that beauty causes foolishness. The last lines also relate like this, showing the reverse, that becoming foolish means that one must be beautiful because beauty causes foolishness. In Nostalgia, another poem by Billy Collins, the theme is that the past is better than the present. Remember the 1340s. We were doing a dance called the catapult. You always wore brown, the color craze of the decade, and I was draped in one of those capes that were popular, the ones with unicorns and pomegranates and needlework. Everyone would pause for beer and onions in the afternoon, and at night we would play a game called Find the Cow. Everything was hand-lettered then, not like today. Where has the summer of 1572 gone? Brocade and sonnet marathons were the rage. We used to dress up in the flags of rival baronies and conquer one another in cold rooms of stone. Out on the dance floor we were all doing the struggle, while your sister practiced the Daphne all alone in her room. We borrowed the jargon of farriers for our slang. Those days language seems transparent, a badly broken code. The tone and mood set in this poem from the start is not only nostalgic, but also reminiscing, and talking of how great the past times were. When talking of the color brown, the color craze of the decade, it is usually taken that brown is a negative color, but given here, it is seen in a positive way. However, there is denotation in the second stanza, where the cold rooms of stone are shown to have a negative denotation to them. In the last sentence of both the first and second stanzas, there is a denotation of the present and a comparison to how the past was better because of it. The 1790s will never come again. Childhood was big. People would take walks to the very tops of hills and write down what they saw in their journals without speaking. Our collars were high and our hats were extremely soft. We would surprise each other with alphabets made of twigs. It was a wonderful time to be alive, or even dead. I am very fond of the period between 1815 and 1821. Europe trembled while we sat still for our portraits, and I would love to return to 1901 if only for a moment, time enough to wind up a music box and do a few dance steps, or shoot me back to 1922 or 1941. Or at least let me recapture the serenity of last month when we picked berries and glided through afternoons in a canoe. In stanzas 3 and 4 in Nostalgia, there is a growing appearance in two major motifs of the poem, nature and dancing. Dancing can be seen as a symbol for fun and having a good time. Nature can be seen as a symbol for all that is still right and pure with the world. References include the music line box and the gliding in the canoe line to these two major motifs. Even this morning would be an improvement over the present. I was in the garden then, surrounded by the hum of bees and the Latin names of flowers, watching the early light flash off the slanted windows of the greenhouse and silver the limbs on the rows of dark hemlocks. As usual, I was thinking about the memories of the past, letting my memory rush over them like water, rushing over the stones on the bottom of a stream. I was even thinking a little about the future, that place where people are doing a dance we cannot imagine, a dance whose name we can only guess. The last two stanzas of Billy Collins' poem Nostalgia show many things that wrap up the whole poem. Especially in stanza 5, there's a great number of natural words and phrases. There is also references to dancing in the final stanza. This is done with uncertainty, as if the author did not know what would come in the future. And what dance we cannot imagine, a dance whose name we can only guess.